Let me ask you this. How many times have you started something with excitement, but stopped before the results could even begin to show? How many dreams have you buried under the excuse of not feeling it today? If that sounds familiar, then don't move. Because what I'm about to tell you may change the way you approach every goal in your life. You see, people don't fail because they lack dreams. People fail because they lack discipline. The difference between the successful and the unsuccessful is not intelligence. It's not talent. It's not even timing. It is consistency. And consistency doesn't arrive politely. It must be forced. You have to push yourself through the days you feel weak, bored, distracted, or lost. That's where the separation happens. That's where everything begins to fall into place. The truth is, success is not this magical moment that shows up in your life. It is the reward you earn when you show up again and again, especially when it's the last thing you want to do. You must understand this the moment you force yourself to keep going, when it's uncomfortable, when it's inconvenient, when it's boring. That is the moment you are rewriting your future. Consistency is like planting a tree. You water it daily. You don't dig it up every few days to check its roots. You trust the process. That's the difference between winners and wishers. Winners trust effort. Wishers trust luck. Some days you'll feel powerful. Some days you won't. But the discipline to show up regardless, that is what multiplies your progress. You may think one skipped day doesn't matter, but one skipped day becomes a skipped week. And one skipped week becomes the reason why your dream never came to life. That's why you must force yourself, not because it's easy, not because it's fun, but because your future is on the other side of that resistance. There will always be a reason to stop, but there will never be growth in quitting. If you want to stand tall in a world that falls apart easily, be consistent, show up, push forward, be unreasonable about your effort, even when no one's clapping. Because every small action compounds, and eventually everything begins to fall into place. You don't have to be the fastest. You don't need to be the smartest. But if you are the one who refuses to give up, you will win. Your dream is not far. It's just on the other side of one more day of consistency. So force yourself to stay in the game. Your results are waiting for you. Just don't stop. Consistency isn't talent. It's discipline. Too many people wait around for a magical feeling to strike before they act. They believe success will come when they're inspired or when the timing feels right. But here's the truth. Inspiration is rare and motivation fades. If you only work when you feel like it, you will rarely work at all. That's where discipline becomes the great equalizer. You don't need to be the most gifted. You don't need to have the most resources. What you do need is the self-respect to keep showing up, especially when it's hard. Talent may give you a head start, but it's discipline that determines how far you go. Look around you. Some of the most successful people are not the most naturally talented, but they're the most committed. They forced themselves to build daily routines. They didn't make excuses. They made systems. They didn't chase perfection. They chased consistency. And that is what created the results others now call luck. When you treat consistency like a skill, not a feeling, you start to win. And like any skill, it must be practiced. Think about it. When you go to the gym, the first few sessions don't give you visible results. You may even feel worse before you feel better, but you keep going. Why? Because you trust the process. You understand that change is invisible before it becomes undeniable. That's exactly how life works. Discipline teaches you to stay in motion, even when there's no proof that it's working yet. Consistency also builds identity. Every time you force yourself to follow through on your commitments, you're casting a vote for the kind of person you want to become. And eventually, your brain starts believing it. I'm someone who doesn't give up. I'm someone who finishes what I start. These small, quiet victories are what transform your mindset and elevate your confidence. It's not about making massive changes overnight. It's about doing the right thing daily until the results can no longer hide. And here's the beautiful part. Discipline becomes easier the more you use it. It becomes a rhythm, momentum. And soon, you're no longer pushing yourself, you're being pulled by your purpose. That's when the shift happens. That's when the habits become part of you. When you cross that line, talent becomes irrelevant because you've already outworked it. So stop waiting for motivation. Stop relying on perfect conditions. Start building the muscle of discipline. Treat consistency as your most valuable skill because it is. It is the difference between a life of regret and a life of progress. When you choose discipline over distraction, when you choose action over excuses, when you force yourself to stay committed, everything starts to change. Not all at once, but steadily, powerfully, and undeniably. The real breakthrough lies in boring repetition. Everyone wants to grow, everyone wants to succeed, but not everyone is willing to endure the monotony that growth requires. We live in a world addicted to excitement and fast results. But real success isn't exciting, it's often dull, repetitive, and painfully slow. The truth no one wants to hear is that breakthroughs are not made during the big moments. They're born in the silence of consistency. The champions, the masters, the game changers, they didn't rise because of one big action. They rose because they embraced doing the same things every single day long before anyone noticed. Repetition is what builds strength. Think of an athlete or a musician. They don't practice until they get it right. Once they practice until they can't get it wrong. Day in and day out, they repeat the same drills, the same moves, the same notes. To outsiders, it looks like a loop. But inside that loop is transformation. Inside that boredom is brilliance. Every time you repeat the process, you get sharper, faster, better. You develop muscle memory, not just in your body, but in your mind. And that's where the breakthrough lies. But most people run from boredom. They want new, they want different, they want excitement. So they jump from goal to goal, from plan to plan, never staying long enough to see the results unfold. They don't realize that the people who succeed are not the ones who found some magic shortcut. They are the ones who fell in love with the process. They understood that boring is not the enemy, boredom is the test. And those who pass it win. If you want to rise, stop searching for novelty and start respecting repetition. Stop waiting for every day to feel different. Most days will feel the same, and that's okay. That's part of the game. That's the hidden price of mastery. Growth is not a constant thrill ride. It's more like brushing your teeth. You do it even when you don't want to because, the cost of skipping it. Progress requires that same mindset. You keep going, not because every moment is exciting, but because you understand the destination is worth every dull step. So, show up again, repeat again, even when it feels useless, even when it feels unproductive, because one day without warning, everything clicks. The routine you once found boring becomes your competitive edge. The habits you once hated become the reason you stand apart. That's how breakthroughs are made. Not in the noise, not in the spotlight, but in the repetition that no one else respects. If you can learn to love the boring work, you will build a life others only dream about. Force is not pressure, it's purpose. When people hear the word force, they often think of struggle, stress or something unnatural. But let's be clear, forcing yourself doesn't mean breaking yourself. It means aligning your actions with your higher vision, even when your emotions don't feel like cooperating. It means showing up because your future matters more than your current mood. Purpose gives force its power. Without purpose, forcing yourself becomes a burden. With purpose, it becomes your greatest tool. The truth is, we all have days where we don't want to do anything. Days where we're tired, discouraged, or just not in the mood. But the people who win in life aren't the ones who only act when they feel good. They're the ones who have learned how to move with intention, not emotion. They've trained themselves to act in service of a goal, not in reaction to a feeling. That's what it means to force yourself with direction, not with dread. You don't force yourself because life demands perfection from you. You force yourself because you refuse to let inconsistency define you. You force yourself because you know what's at stake if you don't. Think about it. What happens when you skip the work? What happens when you delay the habit? You don't just lose time, you lose trust in yourself. And the longer you delay, the more it hurts your confidence, your identity, your future. Forcing yourself is how you protect your progress. We often underestimate how powerful we really are. We let excuses disguise themselves as logic. I'm too tired. It's not the right time. I'll start tomorrow. But tomorrow is just today in disguise. Nothing changes until you decide it must. And the only way to make that decision stick is to take action now, not later. That's what force does. It pushes through resistance. It moves past hesitation. It builds the momentum that emotion cannot. Some of your greatest victories will come on the days when you didn't feel like showing up but did anyway. Because those are the days when you prove to yourself that you're not a slave to your feelings. You are driven by something deeper, something rooted in purpose. When you make that shift, when you start seeing discipline not as punishment, but as a promise, you unlock a version of yourself that's unstoppable. So, no, forcing yourself isn't about stress. It's not about pressure. It's about clarity. It's about choosing the person you want to become over the person you feel like being. It's about realizing that the small, quiet decisions you make when no one's watching are the ones that shape your destiny. Let your purpose be louder than your excuses. Let your vision be stronger than your resistance. When you do that, force becomes fuel and everything begins to move forward. Force is not pressure, it's purpose. Too many people misunderstand what it means to force themselves. They think it's about stress, about grinding endlessly, about pushing so hard that they burn out. But forcing yourself isn't about punishment, it's about direction. It's about refusing to let your feelings control your future. It's about remembering why you started and acting in alignment with your vision, not your emotions. The kind of force that transforms lives is not rooted in struggle, it's rooted in clarity. When you know exactly what you want, you don't wait to feel like it. You move even when it's inconvenient. That's purpose in action. We all hit moments where we feel tired, uninspired, and disconnected. In those moments, your feelings will try to convince you to quit or take a break or delay just one more day. But that's where most people lose, not because they lack skill, but because they listen to temporary emotions instead of long-term goals. If you want to stand out, you have to act differently. You have to force yourself forward, not out of stress, but out of loyalty to your mission. Because your mission matters more than your mood. Purpose-driven force is a commitment. It's waking up and doing what needs to be done, not because it's exciting, but because it's necessary. It's recognizing that there's a cost to every excuse you make. Every time you choose comfort over discipline, you're trading your potential for momentary relief. And over time, those trades become your story. But when you act from purpose, you flip that story. You take control. You show yourself that you're capable of moving forward even when everything inside you wants to pause. Think about the people you admire, the athletes, the entrepreneurs, the leaders. Do you think they always felt like showing up? Of course not. But they had a reason, a vision, a mission that pulled them forward. They weren't just grinding, they were guided. They weren't being pressured, they were being driven. That's the key difference. And that's what you must embrace if you want to rise. When you operate from purpose, force becomes freedom. You're no longer negotiating with yourself every morning. You're no longer trying to find the motivation to act. You just do it. Because that's who you've chosen to become. That's how you build identity. That's how you earn momentum. And that's how you cross the line between trying and achieving. So don't be afraid to force yourself, not in a way that breaks you, but in a way that builds you. Use the weight of your purpose to push through the resistance. Act even when it's hard. Move even when it's uncomfortable. Because every time you do, you're proving to yourself that your dream is worth it. And when you start living from that place, nothing, not doubt, not fear, not fatigue, can hold you back. Motivation is a spark. Consistency is the firewood. Everyone gets motivated from time to time. A powerful video, an inspiring quote, a life-changing book, it lights a fire in us. But that fire, if left on its own, burns out fast because motivation is a burst of energy. It's quick, it's emotional, and it fades. You don't build your life on moments of energy. You build it on habits. And those habits need to be fueled by something deeper, something that lasts longer than a few minutes of hype. That's where consistency comes in. Think of motivation as the start of the journey. It's the reason you get up on day one. But consistency is the reason you're still standing on day 100. Everyone starts, but few continue. Why? Because they mistake the first wave of energy for a guarantee of success. But the truth is, motivation is only useful if it leads to consistent action. It's not what you do when you're inspired that defines you. It's what you do when you're not. There are going to be days when you don't feel like working, when nothing around you is pushing you forward. On those days, you'll feel tempted to pause, to rest, to wait for the spark to return. But if you rely on motivation alone, you'll stay stuck in a cycle of short-lived effort. You'll make progress, then fall back. Start, stop. Start, stop. That's the reality for most people. They live at the mercy of their feelings. But the few who rise above it are the ones who understand that real fire needs fuel. Real results require rhythm. You have to create that rhythm with discipline, with commitment, with showing up no matter how you feel. You don't need to feel good to keep going. You need to keep going to feel good. That's the truth most people ignore. Because it's easier to wait for inspiration than to build habits. But the longer you wait for the feeling to return, the more distance you create between you and your goal. Consistency doesn't wait for emotion. It creates momentum. And momentum is more valuable than any fleeting feeling. The strongest people in any field aren't the most motivated, they're the most consistent. They've learned how to keep working through boredom, through tiredness, through setbacks. That's why they succeed. Not because they're always on fire, but because they've learned how to keep the fire alive, even with just a spark. They've stacked enough actions on top of each other that quitting is no longer an option. It's not about willpower anymore. It's about identity. If you want to become unstoppable, stop chasing sparks and start stacking firewood. Build routines. Stick to your schedule. Do the work even when the excitement is gone. And you'll find something far better than motivation. You'll find results. You'll find progress. And eventually, you'll find yourself standing in the middle of everything you once dreamed about. Not because you waited for the perfect moment, but because you created it one consistent step at a time. Once you master consistency, results become inevitable. It's no longer a question of if things will work, it's only a matter of when. The power of consistency lies in its ability to compound small actions into massive outcomes. You may not see it right away. In fact, the early stages are often thankless. You'll put in the work and see no reward. You'll show up every day and wonder if it's even making a difference. But if you keep going, something powerful happens. Things start to shift. Quietly, subtly, then all at once. That's the hidden truth. Results are not immediate, but they are guaranteed for the consistent. When you show up daily, even imperfectly, you're building more than skill. You're building pressure. And at some point, that pressure breaks through. It's like water dripping on a rock. One drop does nothing. But 1,000 drops, 10,000, the rock cracks. That's how life works. You don't need to force a breakthrough. You just need to outlast the resistance. Stay the course long enough, and the results will show themselves. But here's what most people do. They stop too soon. They quit just before the curve starts to rise. Why? Because they expect results to arrive fast. And when they don't, they get discouraged. They question their effort. They wonder if it's worth it. But mastery, progress, success, they don't follow your schedule. They follow your consistency. Results don't respond to impatience. They respond to dedication.